Can you imagine being in a family where you're manipulated, guilt-tripped, and made to feel never good enough, no matter how hard you try? That's the bitter pill Meri Brown's had to swallow. For years, fans have watched her hang around in the periphery of sister wives, silently suffering emotional abuse. But the show never quite reveals just how poisonous her dynamic with Kody has become. Instead, the spotlight tends to stay on the arguments, the surface-level drama, and the chaos. The real issue, the emotional manipulation coming from Kody and Robyn, and how TLC continues to turn a blind eye to it, rarely gets any serious attention. And here's the kicker. We're led to believe that Kody and Robyn are just misunderstood, that somehow their behavior makes sense. But come on. Nobody at all, is really blaming them for the emotional devastation they've left in their wake, particularly in regard to Meri. Sure, TLC might show us some tears, but they're quick to sweep aside the quiet, more sinister ways these two abuse their influence over the rest of the family. Kody's love-bombing, Robyn's guilt-tripping. It's a toxic dance we've all witnessed, yet somehow, no one's calling them out. Why is no one demanding accountability for the emotional damage they've caused? This isn't just about sister wives drama. It's about real emotional abuse, real manipulation, and deep wounds that go unnoticed because of how the show sugarcoats everything. Why is TLC so committed to shielding Kody and Robyn? And what's the real cost of all this? Stick around, because we're about to uncover something far more unsettling than anything the show has aired. Hi guys, I'm Ania, and welcome back to Reality Recap. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your comments below. Do you think TLC is avoiding the darker reality about the Brown family dynamic? When you tune into Sister Wives, you observe Kody Brown, the alleged head of the household, surrounded by his 4 wives: Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robyn. But most of the time, it is Kody and Robyn who take center stage, particularly after Robyn joined the scene. Their union has always been at the heart of the drama. Kody's connection to Robyn is clear. She's his pet, his so-called soulmate, while the other wives, especially Meri, are relegated to the background. It's as clear as day that this is not your average polygamous family situation. Nevertheless, TLC walks the line, never quite lifting the curtain to reveal just how messed up things really are. What TLC won't reveal to you, what they can't reveal to you, is the way Kody and Robyn employ emotional manipulation as an instrument. Robyn's demure nature may present her as being the victim, yet she contributes significantly to placing the other girls in isolation, particularly Meri. Kody, however, oscillates between faking being the misunderstood husband and full-blown gaslighting. His preferential treatment of Robyn is no secret, but the extent to which he employs her to manipulate and guilt the other wives is something the show only skims. This isn't a matter of some explosive blow-ups here and there. This is prolonged emotional abuse. It's glacial, it's insidious, and with time, people wear down. So why won't TLC throw light on this? Why overlook the emotional cost these women are incurring? Polygamy is controversial enough, but the emotional and psychological cost of it to the women in these situations is practically swept under the rug. Their sanity, their autonomy, their self-esteem, these are things we hardly ever get to see. So again, we must wonder, why is the tale of emotional abuse, particularly Meri's, always hidden from sight? Why do we center on conflict and chaos, not on the deep-seated emotional wounds these women bear? For years, Meri Brown has been cast as the wife who just puts up with it, from Kody blatantly favoring Robyn to the endless emotional roller coaster of plural marriage. Meri has often seemed stuck in a cycle of guilt, sacrifice, and emotional control. But lately, we've started to notice a shift in her, a quiet but powerful transformation. She's not the woman who quietly absorbs the emotional blows. She's figuring out how to set boundaries, to raise her voice, and most importantly, to deflect the guilt-tripping that Kody and Robyn have used for so long. One of the biggest turning points for Meri's self-improvement was when she straight up refused to console Kody when the family hit one of its lows. Before, she would have jumped right into that role of emotional repair person, trying to repair, trying to absorb his hurt. In the past, Meri would have taken a right turn into comforter mode, attempting to soothe Kody through every emotional tempest. This time, she didn't. She recognized the manipulation for what it was. Kody, ever the master of guilt, attempted to pull at Meri's heartstrings, hoping she'd soak up his hurt and become his emotional crutch. But in that instant, Meri made a distinct boundary. She wasn't having it. The actual question is what occurs when Meri does stand up for herself. When she draws boundaries, rather than looking strong or self-aware, she's labeled cold or heartless by both Kody and by the show. Instead of identifying her assertiveness as an indication of respect for herself and growth as an individual, TLC presents it as if there's something inherently wrong with her, like choosing herself is in and of itself a betrayal. Why is it that when Meri finally says, "I'm not carrying this anymore," she gets cast as the villain? Why is her refusal to continue enabling Kody's emotional manipulation labeled as harsh? In reality, this is the first time we're truly seeing Meri take charge of her own emotional well-being. Her own transformation isn't one that can be tidily packaged into a swift soundbite or a dramatic montage. It's been a long and agonizing unwinding of years, blasters of emotional manipulation and psychological conditioning. And every time she resists, every time she says no, Meri takes back a little piece of herself. Unfortunately, TLC does not credit her with that. Instead of respecting her evolution, they persist in painting her as the cold wife, the one who is opposed to the toxic framework Kody and Robyn have established. But to anyone who is actually paying attention, it's clear. Meri is not cold. She's just learning about her warmth, her strength, her voice. Now let's talk about the manipulation. Because when it comes to Kody and Robyn Brown, what we're witnessing is nothing short of textbook emotional abuse. Kody has mastered the art of love bombing. Anytime he wants something from Meri or needs to reset the power dynamic in his favor, he uses it like a charm offensive. It's the way he draws Meri back in, making her feel worth something, desired, even necessary, only long enough to once again get her back in his control. And in high drama moments, such as during the tell-alls, this is taken up several notches. Kody will spontaneously become affectionate, drenching Meri with excessive compliments, or faking she's the one who's been hurt. It's dramatic. It's intense. And it's calculated. This is typical love bombing. It's designed to confuse the person who is being manipulated. One minute, Kody is cold and aloof with Meri. The next, he's faking like they're soulmates, establishing this false intimacy. And it never works because it's not about real love. It's about regaining control by taking over Meri's feelings. But love bombing is just one part of their emotional strategy. Robyn's are equally manipulative, just less loud, less obvious. She is the guilt queen. Robyn is well aware of how to take advantage of Meri's duty and loyalty. She converts Meri's strengths, her heart, her commitment, into vulnerabilities. She portrays Meri as self-centered or unconnected whenever Meri won't bow to Kody's needs. Robyn insists on playing the family-first card, making Meri feel as though she's the dividing force. And when Robyn does lose her temper, particularly when she's fighting with Kody, she quickly manipulates the story. Poof! She's victimized. The delicate flower. The one who requires being safeguarded. And she does this delicately, or occasionally not so delicately, while fingering Meri as the reason she's not managing to keep the family together. This manipulation is perhaps most evident during moments wherein Robyn makes Meri the outsider, as though she is the one shattering the so-called harmony Robyn and Kody are desperately attempting to preserve. What's most disturbing? TLC never actually confronts this. The show just keeps depicting Kody and Robyn as this befuddled, loving couple, one that's getting unfairly judged by everyone else. Their relationship is shot with this idealized, soft-focus approach that protects them from any actual responsibility. So when Meri does finally speak out, when she calls Kody out for what he is doing, or declines to play the game of manipulation, the show portrays her as the bad guy. Instead of exploring the actual emotional harm that is occurring behind closed doors, TLC allows Kody and Robyn to escape without blame. It's maddening. Because the audience is seeing it, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the abusive control. But the show keeps ignoring it. They won't even acknowledge the emotional abuse Meri is experiencing, the guilt trips, the emotional manipulation, all swept under the rug to maintain TLC's sanitized version of the family. Why isn't anyone calling out Kody and Robyn? Why is Meri left to bear the emotional weight alone? The silence from TLC is worse than telling. It leads you to wonder who exactly they're protecting here, the family as a whole, or the manipulative duo calling the shots? Let's take a moment to discuss TLC in and of itself. Because honestly, what is it that they're doing? How is it possible that with all the clear manipulation, emotional abuse, and toxic behavior being exhibited by Kody and Robyn, the network just keeps glossing it over? It's as if they're in on it themselves, keeping the fantasy alive instead of laying bare the dysfunction that clearly's been percolating for years. They have developed this utopian portrait of the family, one that studiously steers clear of delving into the more profound, less palatable realities behind doors. Take Suki, for instance, the supposed teller of tough truths during the tell-alls. What do we actually get as opposed to what we should be getting? We get soft, surface-level probing that doesn't even scratch the surface. There's hardly ever any follow-up, no excavation, no real calling out. Where are the sharp questions regarding Kody's emotional manipulation? Where is the pushback on Robyn for the guilt-tripping she employs so skillfully? It's all glossed over. And as a viewer, that's what frustrates us. You just wait and wait for that moment when Kody and Robyn get called out at last, when someone makes them answer for the emotional damage they've done. But the show just keeps tying everything up in this neat, sympathetic bow, portraying them as merely misinterpreted or just fighting through a tough time. TLC exudes this creepy aura of apathy. And let's get real. They might be depicting reality. They can choose to bring light to the emotional damage polygamy induces. But rather than putting Kody and Robyn's feet to the fire, they concentrate on staged drama and family-friendly imagery because it's more profitable. Worse still, Kody and Robyn can spin the narrative themselves. They get to be the victims. They get to control how they're perceived. And the network just accommodates them. The lack of tough questions, by Suki, by producers, by anyone, is a glaring indicator of neglect. It's a full-on disregard for the emotional suffering undergone by Meri, Janelle, and Christine. And let's not sugarcoat it. It enables this behavior. The show's refusal to press Kody and Robyn to truly confront them isn't just frustrating. It's damaging. The silence from TLC says it all. They're more interested in keeping the peace and protecting their brand than they are in telling the truth. Meri's history has not been simple. If you look hard enough at her past in this family, it's obvious the emotional cost has been accumulating for years. Years before she ever started to set limits with Kody and Robyn. She had already been swimming in emotional abandonment and insidious manipulation. Remember the previous seasons when the cracks first appeared, Recall when Meri's discontent with her position in the family grew increasingly apparent. It wasn't simply a case of tension among the wives. It was about how Meri was always being pushed aside, relegated to a footnote in a marriage where she wasn't even a consideration anymore to Kody. Kody's emotional investment was always focused elsewhere, largely on Robyn. And Meri? She was relegated to the sidelines, disappearing further and further into the background, having to handle the emotional fallout all by herself. So, is it no surprise that she was miserable? She was trapped in a poisonous cycle, guilt-ridden, self-doubting, and convinced that her emotions didn't count. And then there was the catfishing scandal, a moment that utterly destroyed the fantasy. That incident turned Meri around. It was the ultimate betrayal. Not only was she already lonely in her marriage, but now her vulnerability had been publicized for all to see. The scandal wasn't a tabloid headline. It was proof of how emotionally starved she'd become. She was calling out, not for romance, but for connection, because she wasn't getting it at home. And Kody? He took the chance to distort the tale, utilizing the scandal to bend the story and blame Meri. Rather than admit how his emotional abandonment had made her isolated, he made her feel as though she was the one who had broken up the marriage. And Robyn? She didn't provide solace. She inserted herself to further disconnect Meri. She brought the pressure. She heaped on the guilt. She compounded Meri's emotional load. And this wasn't an isolated moment. This was part of an extended pattern, a pattern of emotional manipulation that's been quietly unfolding for years. Each time Meri attempted to speak her truth, each time she pushed against it, she was greeted by guilt, dismissal, and gaslighting. Every time Meri attempted to enforce a boundary, it was either ignored or spun on and turned back around against her. Her journey has been one of simply surviving, managing a family that gaslights her at every turn. And yet, despite all the manipulation and pain she's been through, the show never quite owns it. Instead, we're fed the idea that this is just part of the package when it comes to polygamy. But for Meri, this was never about choice. It was about trying to survive in a situation where her emotional needs were constantly pushed aside. Her time in the Brown family has been far from smooth, and if you look back and really examine the history, the red flags were waving long before she ever attempted to get her voice back. From the start, Meri found herself at odds with her place. She was the first wife, the building block of the family, but Kody's focus immediately turned elsewhere. As the family grew, Meri's place in it seemed to dwindle. She was no longer his priority. Kody became more emotionally invested in his relationships with the younger wives, particularly Robyn. But this was not merely a question of who Kody loved more. It was about Meri being put in an ongoing state of emotional competition. She would have to battle for affection, battle for attention, and battle just to be heard. And whenever she attempted to make her voice known about how unhappy she was ignored. The outcome? A woman gradually disintegrating over time, her anger, her suffering, all etched on her face long before she ever uttered a word. And then there was the break-it-all kind of moment, the catfishing scandal. That debacle not only embarrassed Meri in public, it destroyed any dwindling credibility remaining in her marriage. The psychological damage was incalculable. After all those years of being emotionally deprived, she stretched out her hand and was rejected in the most cruel manner imaginable. But rather than providing help, Kody politicized the scenario. He used it as a means of shaming her, making it all about himself, his own hurt, his own image. Never did he take time to think about why Meri was so vulnerable in the first place. And Robyn? She moved in, as always, not to support Meri, but to further solidify herself in the power structure, placing herself as the supporting one while Meri just collapsed alone. The catfishing wasn't an ill-advised choice. It was the natural consequence of years of emotional deprivation. And yet, in some way, Meri was cast as the villain. She was made to feel ashamed and guilty, not only by Kody and Robyn, but by the show itself. No one confronted the issue at hand, the manipulation, the abandonment, the way that Meri had been emotionally marginalized for years. TLC was pretending this was just another hump in the road, another soap operatic subplot. But this wasn't soap opera. It was emotional abuse. And Meri's tale isn't an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a much more pervasive issue, one that's very much ingrained in polygamous relationships. Underneath the big smiles and coordinating outfits is a system in which women are worn down emotionally, asked to do everything but share their husband's love and emotional attachment. In these households, it's not simply a matter of being neglected, of being made to feel like your needs don't exist. The emotional manipulation, the guilt-tripping, the way women such as Meri are compelled to compete simply in order to be noticed, it's heartbreaking. In homes where power nearly always rests with the husband, wives are left invisible, unheard, and drained of emotion. Consider what that does to yourself. When you spend your life trying to prove yourself, always in fear of being excluded, always assured your pain isn't real, it shatters something within you. And with time, that destruction is deep. It chips away at your self-esteem. It causes you to question your own limits, and it leaves long-term emotional wounds that don't simply heal. And yet TLC still glosses over it. The network has the platform, the footage, and the audience to speak the truth. But they don't. Rather, they remain at the surface. They sidestep the difficult conversations. They play down the psychological damage that women within these relationships suffer. If the show was as concerned with getting the whole story out, they would explore the actual costs of polygamy. They would cease to idealize a life that leaves women emotionally bruised and utterly isolated. But rather, they keep spiking our food with this cleaned-up version of the truth. So, as we conclude, let's not sugarcoat it. The Brown family dynamic is not simply dysfunctional, it's toxic. The emotional manipulation that Kody and Robyn hand out to Meri is not another subplot. It's a painful reminder of what occurs when someone attempts to control someone else, and people in positions of power to hold them accountable give them the benefit of the doubt. Why does TLC continue to idealize them? Why do Kody and Robyn get to ride off free every single time their actions cross a boundary? And why is Meri, someone who's finally placing boundaries and taking back her voice, still being deemed cold or aloof, rather than being lauded for asserting herself? I'd love to hear what you believe. Is TLC concealing the truth intentionally? What is the reason behind so much silence regarding the emotional harm polygamy inflicts, particularly upon women such as Meri? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you're interested in more unfiltered, unapologetic opinions on sister wives, the kind that delve beneath the surface and actually examine the toxic relationships unfolding in the background, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. So what's your opinion? Is this family as happy and functional as TLC portrays it to be? Or are we all witnessing something much uglier happen behind reality TV's veil of carefully constructed editing?